Since I was a kid, I've been fascinated by stories. Not just the what, but the how. How lives change. How moments unfold. I realize the answers, they aren't always in books, but they're with people too. That's why we started this show, to uncover the extraordinary in the everyday, one story at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to ACTV Storytellers. This is a show where we chronicle the lives of significant and impactful people in Anderson County, and this is our fourth episode of Storytellers. Since it's April, the beginning of baseball season, nobody better to interview this month than Coach Alvin Taylor, who is synonymous with baseball in Clinton. I don't know if baseball would exist in Clinton if it wasn't for Coach Taylor. So he's generously agreed to come in and participate in episode 4. So without any further ado, Coach, thank you for coming. Let's just jump right into it.
Well, I'm extremely proud that you asked and glad to be here. The only thing is, I know that ahead of me you had Dr. Sexton and Sam Turner and Jody and Clark. I mean, if I'm on that team, I'm a utility man, I guarantee.
But you still get the ring at the end.
I still get a ring, yeah. Hopefully,
true.
yeah.
Well, let's jump right into it. So I know you were born in the Blowing Springs community.
Right.
But talk about how your family's journey took you to Marlow and how ultimately you ended up at Clinton.
Well, it had to do with my mom and dad. My dad was from Marlow, and my mom was from Blowing Springs. And so both of them have kind of their own unique stories. My dad, he was the oldest of 8 kids. And so in the 1920s, no, I wasn't around at that point in time. His dad died, and he was the oldest of 8 kids. So he quit school and got various jobs to help his mom out. And the youngest in the family was 2 years old. His youngest brother was 2 years old. And so it wasn't like his mom could just go out and get her a job and help things out. So he quit school and started to work. And man, he had a tough time there, because not too long after that, the Depression hit. So he's still trying to raise money for his mom and his 7 siblings, and things aren't going too well. Then about a decade after that, World War II hit. And he was 32 or 33 years old. He got drafted into World War II. And the next thing you know, he's over in Europe. And so he had some tough times. And at least when World War II hit, his siblings had gotten a little bit older, but his mom was still home. And he would send his military checks back to his mom. Prior to World War II, he got hired at Magnet Mills here in Clinton.
Right.
Huge place for a lot of area people. And so when he came back from the war, he got his job back. And so it was at Magnet Mills that he met my mom, and she was from Blowing Springs. And he was the oldest of the family. She was the youngest in her family, although their ages weren't greatly different. And she was still at home with her parents. And so they got married in 1950. That's when I was born. I was born in the house that they were staying in with her mom and dad. And we stayed there till I was like 2 years old. And what happened, my dad's mom started having health issues. She was diabetic and had some other things going on. And so they moved back to his house, his family's house, and she passed away in 1952. So they were, part of it was because of her family, but part of it was because of his family. And so that was the house that I was raised in Marlow.
Well, I know one of the most interesting things that I found is when you and I were, and you graciously invited me over to your house, and I really appreciate that. The memorabilia you had was worth a visit in and of itself, but your parents, they played unique roles in your life.
Man, they really did.
In ways that most people probably wouldn't assume for mothers and fathers.
Well, yeah, and what happened, my dad, I don't know if he had an athletic bone in his body. He never had an opportunity to play anything, because like I say, he was a teenager when his dad passed, and boom, after that, his siblings literally kind of viewed him as almost like their dad, because he helped raise them. His baby brother was 2 years old, so he didn't really even know his dad. And so my dad, he was always working. He was always in the military or whatever, and he didn't have anything to do with sports. Now he had two brothers that I've been told were terrific, but not so much for my dad. But my mom, and I don't really know. I don't know exactly why, but she was like a baseball fanatic, and usually it would be reverse,
right. Yeah.
But I remember she would listen to on the radio. Back then you could pull in a lot of games on the radio,
AM radio.
AM, yeah. And so around here you could pick up the Reds, the Pirates, and the Cardinals. That was the three prime stations you could pull in at night on a nice clear night. You understand? But she'd listen. We'd listen to ball games together, and a lot of times she'd ask me the next day. I had a radio in my room. She'd ask me if I listened to the game or did I fall asleep or how did the game turn out.
And you had no idea where her love for baseball came from.
Well, no, but what she did, even above and beyond that, and later, we had a TV like a lot of people. We had an antenna outside. You picked up 3 channels. You had 6, 10, and 26. That's pretty.
On a clear day, you had 3 channels.
Yeah, on a clear day. And so the absolute only baseball on TV was the Saturday game of the week. And if you missed it, you had to wait till next Saturday. There was not any more baseball on. And so later on in life, when she got hooked up to cable TV, man, she was incredibly happy with
WTBS
that.
and
WGN. The Braves
WGN.
are on all time. The Cubs are on all time. She'd be watching games like crazy. But what she did, it was incredible looking back on, just an incredible sacrifice. We were out in the county. I mean, we didn't have organized stuff provided. There wasn't like a little league in downtown Marlow, you understand. She thought it'd be a good idea if I came up and played baseball in Clinton. And she wanted to know if I wanted to try out for Clinton Little League. I said, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Now, we'd played, kids growing up down there, whatever was in season, that's what we were playing. And baseball related, we'd do baseball stuff, but we'd play wiffle ball and cork ball and, just all kind of different stuff,
I just want you to know, this is episode 4, and cork has been mentioned on 50% of the episodes.
Wow.
Jody and Clark talked about playing cork growing up in Lake City, that's something I didn't think would happen. 50% of the episodes we talked about cork.
I tell you what, that's a fantastic game.
Sure.
And you can't convince me that doesn't help your hand-eye coordination. Yeah. Because you'd be cork in a soft drink bottle. You'd pop that cork out and stack them on top, put a pin in it, tape it up, and you'd flip it and bat with a broomstick or whatever. But man, you had to keep your eye on the ball.
Yeah, you did.
Had to keep your eye on the cork. So we were doing all that. But she had asked me about trying out for Clinton Little League, and I mean it's really a placement. It's not a tryout where some kids get cut or whatever. So anyway, I made the Reds. So that's a good thing. I was on the Reds in Clinton Little League. But the bottom line problem is, my mom never learned to drive. And so, okay, now I'm on this team, and they're going to practice, and they're going to have some games. But my dad was over at Magnet Mills on the second shift. So here's what she did, and I know moms make incredible sacrifices every day. All moms do. What we would do, if it was either a practice day or a game day, he worked 3 to 11 shift. We'd get in the car. We'd eat lunch at home. We'd get in the car around 2:30. He'd drive to work. Magnet Mills is over next to CVS here in town. Mm-hmm. Everybody's seen pictures or whatever. But where the Clinton Towers is located, there used to be a big parking lot for the employees for Magnet Mills. And so he'd pull into the parking lot and he'd take off, go to work. We would literally be there from 2:45, 3 o'clock till he got off at 11 o'clock. And so, man, that's thinking back on it, that's a huge sacrifice. So we would do anything to kill time. I mean, we'd go around town. I mean, they probably thought we were, breaking and entering or stealing or something there, But you had some stores in town that you don't have today. They had some dime stores. Gann's had a variety store, and Lou Allen Miller's, and had a few restaurants. So we would eat supper at home, but then we would go to one of the restaurants, or we'd go to Hoskins or wherever to eat supper. And so the games would be, probably 6 o'clock. And so if we had the early game, we'd eat, and then we'd walk over to the field there across from the football field. and then have a game, and then we'd hang around and usually watch the second game. Or if we were playing the second game, we'd go early to watch. We're just doing anything and everything to kill time.
And that kind of fostered, I remember you telling me, that kind of fostered a love for reading for you.
Oh man, yeah. Back then, I had subscriptions to a magazine called Sport Magazine and one called Baseball Digest, and I would read different novels or whatever. And man, we had all kinds of time to kill. And so I'd just be sitting in the car and just reading either a baseball magazine or some book or whatever. And then we'd go around or whatever. And so that was when I was 11 years old and 12 years old. And I mean, who does that,
Right.
to a sacrifice? I mean, that was incredible on her part. But that allowed me to get in more organized mode. I mean, usually, at Marlowe, everybody just played, but there wasn't any organized little league or anything like that. And so that kind of opened up some eyes that there's more things out there that you can get involved with.
So in Clinton at that time, what was this? I mean, particularly baseball, but what was the sports culture like at that point? I mean, as far as how organized was the little league, the senior leagues, and all that at that time?
Yeah. It's sad today. I wish today they were as more organized as they used to be back then. But yeah, you'd start out in little league as I don't remember having t-ball back then, but maybe they did, and that was just I wasn't here. I was out in Marlowe. But little league was 9 through 12, and then they had next league was what was called senior league. It's 13, 14, 15. Then they had a league called the Big League. It was 16, 17, and 18, and all that was here. And sometimes if you had older kids, like in that bigger league, older league, kids would come in from different places. I know I've talked to Clark and Jody different times where they played here at the fairgrounds, a lot of times. But man, back then you could have a league and fill it up with just local kids. And what's sad, and Clinton's not, they don't have the market cornered on this. Every community around now, basically, they run stuff for their youth till like age 12, and that's it. Like growing up, we're having like high school kids that I coach. We'd play against Central. At one time over at Central in Fountain City, and then also in Feeding Central High School was Inskill. Both those places had like 1,000 kids in the summer, from little kids all the way up. They don't even have anything now.
Right.
Oak Ridge used to have, it was kind of a hotbed for baseball there at one time. They go through the boys club and they quit at age 12, and so I mean it's just sad, and you can tell it nowadays on your high school teams, because a lot of times if some kids, like your star players, they're probably going to play out and be on maybe a travel team, and so that works for them. But what about these kids that may not be able to make a travel team?
Right.
And so you're seeing a lot of high school teams nowadays, their numbers are down, because if a kid's 13, 14, whatever years old, there's nothing available for them. They just quit, and chances are they may not come back.
Well, and I think one of the sad things, and you touched on it, is, kids who are with parents who have a little money, they can afford to play travel ball. But if you're a kid that maybe would have played City League, because when I played, my parents, they were working folks, but I played on the same baseball team with Dr. Sexton's kids and Bob Swisher's kids and Dr. Burrell's kids.
Yeah.
We all played on the same league, and it didn't really matter whether your dad was a doctor or your dad worked in the factory. I mean, we all played on the same team. You don't really see that happen as much anymore, and when the kids, in the local communities, when they don't get to play beyond Little League, by the time they get to high school, they're already kind of behind the 8 ball.
Right. A lot of parents, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes, a lot of parents spend a whole bunch of money, and they start at an early age. I mean, a kid might be 8 years old or whatever, and they're involved on one of these travel teams. Well, then those travel teams, they want you to come there in the off season for hitting lessons and pitching lessons, and you got to write a check for all this stuff, And I don't know. I mean, like baseball scholarship wise, and it's different now with the two things with the lottery scholarship. If kids got pretty good grades, and they can get into a state school, and get academic money that they used to not be able to get. But athletic money, I mean, they're slicing and dicing it like crazy. You might get books, or you might get a fourth of a scholarship, or whatever. And see, a lot of these schools, Carson Newman, Tusculum, LMU, Maryville College, I mean, they're all high dollar.
Pricey.
And so, if you got a kid growing up, I don't know. I mean, and I know you get caught up in that, and everybody wants to keep up with the Joneses. Sure. I mean, if your neighbor's on a travel team or whatever, then you want to do that. And I'm not bashing travel ball, but a lot of people find when they get up, kid starts at 8 or 9 or whatever. When they get up to about 14 or 15, they're burned out. They're just over it, And a lot of those travel teams are going to Atlanta or Myrtle Beach, or they're traveling all over. High school teams can't do that, I mean, on a regular basis, Mm-hmm. And so a lot of kids are just flat out burned out. And you didn't used to have that back in the good old days. Is people would play Clinton kids, they'd play in Clinton. Lake City people playing, Lake City. Well, eventually you'd get your all-star games and all that good stuff. But man, those days are gone.
Yeah.
I got a good friend of mine, coaches in college, and he told me just a couple years ago that he's afraid that it's going to eventually hit high school, where a lot of high schools, they won't even have high school baseball, because all these kids, they go to travel ball, and college guys, they can go to one site, one location. There's one in East Cobb, there's one on the other side of Chattanooga, Ripken up here. They got multiple fields. They go to any one of these sites that has multiple fields in the summertime, because they're not playing at that time. They see all these kids, and that might be where they
one trip scouting. You don't have to go all to all the high schools.
I'm going to tell you another one would be the transfer portal and all this stuff. Now, some colleges in basketball and in baseball, they're not signing high school kids. They don't want to take a risk on an 18-year-old high school kid that basically he's had high school experience and that's it, as opposed to a 21-year-old. He's already played 2 or 3 years of college. He's already bigger and stronger and all that. They're signing those portal guys at the expense of high school kids.
Yeah. So you personally, you're playing Little League, your mom's supporting you there. At what point in your life, this is kind of 2 questions, at what point in your life did you start noticing, I'm pretty good at this? And then who were the influences? Because I know when you're playing Little League, anybody, you start looking around, and then senior league, and the wheat starts separating from the chaff a little bit. You kind of start, that guy's good. Right. I mean, this guy's a local guy that's playing with his team. But when did you start realizing I'm pretty good at this, and who influenced you?
Most of the time, you eventually toward the end of the season, you have all-star selections or whatever. I was fortunate enough to make those teams, and so not that you stick your chest out and go around, tooting your own horn or whatever, but you kind of know, well, okay, if I'm on that team, I must be doing okay. Even back, I remember this. We're playing elementary basketball. I got to tell you, no, we can't get too far along. I got to tell you about the Marlowe situation in basketball. You're not going to believe this, but anyway, just about every elementary school. I can't say that every single one. See, now you got Marlowe and Shinliver and Glen Alpine and Rosedale. There's a lot of places that used to have community schools that don't have them anymore. But back then, I think just most all those had elementary school teams. And we would play, and at the end of the year, you'd have a county elementary school tournament. And I'm going to tell you about the Marlowe gym here in a minute, but I was in the 5th grade. And most teams then, you'd rely on people that were 7th grade, 8th grade, or whatever. I was in the 5th grade, and they had the elementary school tournament at Lake City High School. And you're going to find out why I thought Lake City was something else at the time. I thought I was in Madison Square Garden. I didn't know I didn't know what was going on, but I was a 5th grader playing on an elementary school team, and so you kind of start seeing. then eventually, when I got to high school, there was only two ninth graders, myself and a guy named Tommy Lloyd from South Clinton. We were on the varsity as ninth graders, and we both got to play. I mean, we weren't the main guys or anything, but we got to play, quite a bit being ninth graders. But here you go. I got to tell you this. I grew up in Marlow, and you're going to think I'm lying. Back in the 60s and the 70s, in the NBA, the Warriors used to be called the San Francisco Warriors.
Yeah.
And their arena used to be the Cow Palace. Now, I don't know how they came up with that name or whatever, but here you go. In Marlow, if you looked up at the school facility, over here you had the main school that had the classrooms and offices and the bathrooms and all that. Well, in the middle, there's three buildings. In the middle, you had the cafeteria. It had a covered walkway, not far, but you'd go from the main building, cafeteria. Cafeteria had, tables where you'd eat lunch, and they had a stage if you had any kind of production or whatever. So that's the middle building. Well, over here on the right, we kind of copied the San Francisco Cow Palace, I think. There was this as a wooden structure. It looked exactly like a barn. I mean, 100% like a barn. And so here's parts that just, I don't know if the Marlow people weren't paying their taxes, or I don't know what the problem was. So when you had to walk around, there was no paved sidewalk. You had to walk around the cafeteria. So if it had been raining, you're going through the mud, okay? So then you go over and you get to the gym. You enter the gym. There's no electronic scoreboard. There's no dressing rooms. There are no bathrooms. The only heat in the building, there are two pot-bellied stoves at each end of the floor. If I'm lying, I'm dying. That's how that place was heated. And obviously, you're playing basketball in the wintertime.
Sure.
There's no bleachers. They just had some folding chairs, and people would come in and sit in those folding chairs and watch the game. Now, if the score changed, there's a chalkboard over here. They have to race the score and change the chalkboard, and we would have to dress in the gym. I mean, in the elementary, in the building, and that's where the bathrooms are. And they just pull the shades down on the room in certain rooms, And so you dress there. You go out, and it'd be cold, and so you go out and you had to go across behind the cafeteria to get over to the Cow Palace over here, But that's where we play. That's where we played our home games. And that's why Lake City looked like Madison Square Garden to me.
I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true.
I can honestly say I don't know that I'd ever played in another gym that had a chalkboard for the scoreboard. And
well, it's a good thing that y'all weren't running and gunning back then, or somebody would have had to been working a lot to keep.
Hey, if they had a 3-point line back then, you'd have had a backcourt violation. But we had we had some good teams when I was 8th grade. Man, we were really good, and we had they were my first cousins. They were brothers, Ollie and Gary. I mean, we ended up, all three of us, played for Clinton. It got down at that year, South Clinton was really good, and so we played each other in the county championship. South Clinton took us down, but a lot of their guys, a guy named Tommy Lloyd and Paul Price and Joe Greenlee and different ones that they had, eventually we were all together at Clinton High School.
Well, that was an interesting thing for me, because when we talked, I've always associated you with baseball, and I was shocked when I found out that you went to college on a basketball scholarship.
Yeah.
So how did that happen?
Well, again, even more so probably back then, schools would slice and dice those scholarships. I mean, even in baseball today, you don't get a full ride. I mean, unless you're like a high draft pick guy, and now you're combining NIL and all that stuff. It's way before NIL, But fortunately, I had some choices, and some schools I talked to was about baseball. Other schools were about football or about basketball. But what I was really looking for was like a combination where you get them both, and get a better scholarship. I had one coach one time. I went up for a tryout, and he just point blank told me that if I'd been like 6'6" or 6'7", I probably wouldn't be there, because I'd be a much higher level prospect. I wasn't big enough to play the post, and he didn't need any guards, so he didn't even make an offer. And but that school, I had a partial offer for baseball. Well, that didn't really match up, what I was looking for. So there's this school in northern Alabama called St. Bernard College. It's in Coleman, Alabama. They offered me a full ride in basketball, and kind of hard to turn down a full ride.
Sure.
But they also offered the option that I could have played baseball, but at the time, and I don't know, sometimes I've kind of regretted this. At the time, I was looking at, well, I've already got a full ride, and so it's not going to add anything to what I'm already getting. So I stuck with basketball, and really, I probably played more summer league ball than high school. Back then, high schools, we don't play 10 or 12 games. That's just what everybody did. I'm sure it had to do with cost and all that. So I actually played more. Actually, as far as playing, I probably played more ball in the summer. I played down in that league in Oak Ridge, and it went up. Their league went up to like 19, so I was like a freshman in college, and I was still playing, summer league baseball. And then I had a roommate, and he was from Owensboro, Kentucky. I don't even remember how this happened. I've asked him; he doesn't remember either. But we umpired high school baseball in Alabama. And
was that legal then?
I have no idea. I don't even know.
I don't know what the statute of limitations are.
Now you got to be in the pass some exams and all that stuff, and man, we didn't do any of this. I don't even know how that came about, but we did some umpiring. And then also in the summers, there's a guy in Oak Ridge named Bobby Hopkins, and Bobby was a terrific umpire. I mean, terrific. And in fact, the field down at Oak Ridge now is Bobby Hopkins Field.
Really?
But he headed up the umpires for summer ball, and after I finished my playing time down there, he'd ask me the next year, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I had a summer job." And he said, "Well, you need to come out here and umpire with me." So I umpired down there when I was in college. I umpired there for 2 or 3 years, So I was always around baseball, either playing or umping. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't want to tell too many people about the umping career, and how they.
I bet you've been pretty hard on umpires over your tenure.
I do remember up at Lake City one time. I went up there with this guy named Frank Diggs.
Oh, and I know Coach Diggs.
And he and I were umping, and that was the deal up at Lake City, man. It was like a 4th of July thing, and I mean it was an all day.
Oh, that's a big deal.
All day deal.
Oh yeah.
And so we were up. I mean, we umpired multiple games, but they had a big picnic and a 4th of July thing and all that business.
Still do.
I remember that. That would have been about 1970 or 71 or whatever.
There's a chance I might have been at the field the same day with you, Coach. I'd have just been carried around by my mom at that point. But I'm sure they were there.
I tell you who was Merle Albright. Merle and I, we eventually became pretty good friends there and everything. But he was playing then. So yeah, I've always either been playing or been around it in some form or fashion. Summer league or umpiring or whatever.
Both of my brothers and cousins played for Coach Albright for Lake City High School. They thought that when they got through with his practices, they thought they were in the best condition that they were ever going to be in their lives.
I'd say some of mine would have said the same thing because, man, I don't know. We did a lot of running. I mean, we really did. But you know what Merle and I did there one year, and I don't even know today if this would even happen. I mean, I know they're rivals, I mean, Clinton wanted to beat AC, and I guarantee you AC wanted to beat Clinton.
Sure.
But what we did, we'd known each other for a long time. We had summer camps together for 2 weeks. And first week might be in Clinton, and the second week is going to be up at AC. The next year, we'd reverse it. First week would be at AC and then at Clinton. And we'd tell kids if they had a conflict, like one day, like we'd have it scripted out on what days we're going to do pitching, this and this and this, and we're going to do hitting, and through the Monday through Friday. And if they couldn't make it to one of those days, we're going to be under the same plan, next week. So come down to Clinton or come up to AC or whatever. Man, I don't even know if that would even be feasible nowadays, And I mean, we both wanted to beat each other, but I mean, at the end of the day, we were friends, you know. And I don't know. I don't know if that could happen nowadays.
Well, when you were playing in college, how did the practice, the training, how was it different than high school? And do you feel like it kind of prepared you for that level of competition?
In a lot of ways, it had similarities. I played for a guy in high school named Jay Nidifer. I mean, he's hardcore. You know, he's hardcore. So we had some rough stuff. But basically in college, and I've always told my guys, anybody that had even a slight chance to maybe get a scholarship, and I've been fortunate. We've had a whole bunch of them that have, and some of them got scholarships, but I don't know, they didn't stay around long enough. I don't even think they unloaded their suitcase. You know, they were hit and gone. You know, but in college, man, it's a job. I mean, it's a job. I mean, I know they're giving you X amount of money for, you know, room and board or books or, you know, whatever. And today's even different than that. But it's a job. And I know like in basketball, we would have a Saturday morning, we'd practice Monday through Friday, preseason. But then Saturday morning, we had a like 10 o'clock practice Saturday morning. And then we'd have a Sunday evening practice like 7:30. And so basically that meant the school I was at, it was like 5 hours away. So there's no going home. You know, I mean, you didn't have time, you know. Now other people, you know, live closer and they could, but still, yeah, it was kind of tough. And you had to be at Saturday morning and Sunday night. That was just part of it. And so that was, I think that helped later on to maybe give some guys some idea. I mean, I think everybody in high school, you know, they think they're it, right. You know. As you get into college, maybe you will still be, but there's a good chance you might not, you know. And that I think that might have helped out, you know, somewhat maybe, and kind of helping kids as they were thinking about college.
Most of the high school kids that I talk to, and I see both Anderson County, Clinton kids, they use that. I didn't know that it was going to be a job. You know, when I got to college, I didn't know, you know, whatever sport they're playing, it's like you do it. Yeah. You do it 20 hours a week or whatever, and then there's film study, and then there's workouts and training, and you know, and it's like basically you go to class, and then you do your sport, and then you sleep. Yeah. You know, and that's the college. And I was like, wow.
I think that did factor in when I was in college. I think that factored in on not playing baseball because, see, what we'd do, we'd start, like practices, hardcore would start in October. We'd have to do stuff, preseason type stuff, and then October, and then you start playing in November. Well, we'd be in some tournament at Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's out. Then at Christmas, you get a chance to come home, but usually we'd be in some tournament like December the 28th and 29th or whatever. So you got to go 5 hours back to Alabama, and so Christmas is partially out, and so I think that kind of factored in because I knew in the spring they'd be taking a trip on spring break, and so man, you're missing out on a whole lot if you're trying to do both, you know.
So when you're playing ball, when did you start getting the itch to be a coach? When did you know, hey, I you know, when I'm done, might be what I want to do, coaching ball? And what made you choose baseball over basketball?
Maybe when I found out I couldn't guard anybody. Remember when girls, they played 6-on-6? You know, you'd have three offensive players down here and three. We need to have boys basketball like that. I would stay down here while everybody gets to shoot down here. I didn't want to be down here and guard. But you know, growing up, there's three things I just knew I was going to be. When I was a little guy, I just knew I was going to be a cowboy. And so I had me a guitar and everything. I just needed a horse. That's all.
Gene Autry, Roy Rogers.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I grew up with. And so I just knew I was going to be a cowboy. Well, eventually you find out there is no horse and you can't sing, and so that's probably
out.
That's probably out. Well, like the next thing, I just absolutely knew I was going to be in major leagues, and I was probably so talented I'd probably be in the major leagues and the NBA, you know. Well,
at the same time.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, in baseball, they started throwing this thing called a curveball. You understand?
I've heard of it.
curveballs and me probably didn't get along too well.
It's crippled a lot of baseball players, I'll tell you.
If they kept throwing straight, I might still be playing, but they'd throw these curveballs in there. And so kind of saw that Major League Baseball may not be in the picture, you know. And then in basketball, especially when I got in college, I mean, I could shoot. I mean, I was a good shooter. But like in the league, it was called the ACC, the Alabama Collegiate Conference. And there was 4 teams, 4 schools down there were just bigger than everybody else, and they all had football, and the other 4 didn't. But I know you've heard of Jacksonville State.
Sure.
They're big now. That was in our conference. There's a school that used to be called Troy State, but now it's Troy University.
Troy.
They just got in March Madness.
Yes.
There was a school called Florence State. It's now the University of Northwest Alabama. And they've been good in multiple sports, you know. And so, man, you get in playing those guys. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a rude awakening there. Even guys on my team, we had a guy named Dale Hardiman. He's one of the best athletes I've ever seen. He's about 6'4", just run like a deer. He led that conference in scoring, averaged 20-something points a game. You know, just terrific. But he got drafted by the Cincinnati Reds. And he got up to like AAA, but that was during the time of the Big Red Machine, and he saw the writing on the wall, you know. Well, I saw it a little bit sooner than Dale, I think. But I love sports. Even today, I love to go to sporting events. Doesn't matter what the sport is. I love or watch them on TV or whatever. So I kind of knew, and playing, I love the competition. And you know, in coaching, you're right there with it. I mean, you know, that falls right in line. So I knew that if an opportunity opened up, that's what I wanted to do. And fortunately for me, it happened.
Right here back in Clinton.
Yeah.
Where you played high school ball.
Exactly.
So before you tell me this, do you know Nathan Wade?
Yes.
He's the principal at ACCT.
Yeah.
So his son's a baseball player.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Young man, and he told me this week he was talking to some coaches, some minor league players, and he asked him. He said, what do you do? How do you hit the curveball? And the response was, you wait and hit the fastball. and he goes, well, I know, but he needs to learn to hit the curveball. He goes, if they're throwing a good curveball, you're not going to hit it. So you hit the fastball. Either wait for them to make a mistake or hit the fastball. And I was like, he was telling me that story, and I was like, that's fair, because I wasn't as good as you, but I thought when I was younger, I thought, I can hit pretty good, until people started making the ball move.
Yeah.
And then it got a whole lot harder, when it didn't go straight anymore.
I went to a clinic one time, and one of the speakers, you remember Bill Matlock?
I do.
He played third base for the Pirates. He won like 2 batting titles. And so he went over different things on hitting, and it got to where it was a question and answer session. And somebody asked Bill Matlock that same question. Raise your hand. Yeah, okay, what's your question? Bill, how do you hit a curveball? And that's exactly what he said. He said, yeah, I know how to hit a curveball. Don't miss the fastball.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. So you find yourself back at Clinton. What was that like for you? Because it's got to be weird coming back home to the place where you played high school ball and you grew up. And I mean, were you nervous? I mean, what if you come here and screw it up? I mean, like.
Well, and it wasn't the same school. My class was the last class in the old Clinton High School. What's the middle school now?
Sure.
And so I didn't make it to the new school, which is now 50 years old, So it was different in that respect, and I didn't necessarily know that was going to be what happened. I kind of thought maybe I might land a job down in Alabama somewhere. There were a bunch of schools near Coleman where I went, and I kind of thought maybe that might happen. But Paul Bostic was the superintendent of schools, and I played Little League All Stars with Mr. Bostic. And his son Jinx and I played together. Jinx was a year ahead of me, but we played together for, years and years. And I'd put my application in early because I liked the idea of possibly coming back here. But what happened was Cleve Nichols was a basketball coach at Clinton High School. Well, he got into full-time administration. Don Lockard was his assistant coach, and so he got elevated up to be the head coach. And
I did not know that's how that happened.
Yeah, and so now there's an assistant coach position open, and so Mr. Bostic gave me a call. Wanted to make sure I was in line to graduate. I graduated in May of 72, and make sure what I majored in, and I had a double major in English and then health and PE in education, and he said, well, there's an open at Clinton High School, and so what it worked out. What I did at St. Bernard, I was able to do a couple things. One, I was able to get my degree, and I was able to meet my wife. My wife was in school down there,
yeah,
and her dad was in the military, and so we started dating, and we got married in December of 1971. We were both seniors at the time, and so when I landed this job, there wasn't a job that she had. She had to go back and get some elementary school certification that she didn't have. So she got hired the second year, and she taught kindergarten, for years. But yeah, a lot of it had to do with Mr. Bostic, and a lot of it had to do just strictly with timing. I mean, people don't understand, like if a coach gonna get hired over to school, there's got to be a teaching spot there, Mm-hmm. If there's not that spot, then there's not a match. Or if they've got a spot and you're not certified in whatever the subject is, you're not going to get that job.
So were you teaching English or doing PE?
English, yeah.
So you taught English and
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, I hate to do this, but we just got to, because there's no way to tell the Alvin Taylor story without talking about it. So I want to stop the chronological flow of your story a little bit.
Yeah.
And let's talk about a friendship of yours. There's no way to tell your story without talking about Freddy.
Yeah. Oh no, I totally agree. And if you hadn't brought it up, I guarantee I'd have found somebody to work it in here. I guess first thing, anybody that sees this, Freddy's in need of prayers. He's having some health issues,
right?
And getting a little bit better, but he needs some prayers.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about how you met Freddy and what were some of your first impressions.
Oh man, Freddy, he and his family lived in a house that was diagonal across the street from our house. So I'd see him. He got two brothers, two sisters, and Freddy. I'd see all of them, But back in those days, we got back here. My first year was 1972, 73. And we rented an apartment there for a while, but we moved in the house that we're in one year. We moved there in 1975. So in 1975, he's diagonally across the street every day, But back then, Freddy was a lot more active. I mean, he would walk all over creation. I mean, it didn't matter if it was summertime, wintertime. It didn't matter. But what kind of bonded us, I guess. And I'll tell you, I've told people for years, Freddy's one of the best friends I've ever had. I mean, there's no two ways about it. He's just funny. People know Freddy, but they don't know Freddy. And he's hilarious, telling stuff and doing things, and sometimes it's on him or sometimes it's on anybody else. But he loves to be part of some kind of social something. And so what happened in the mid-'70s, I got hired in the summertime to manage the Clinton swimming pool up at J.C. Park. And Freddy, he'd be all over the place. And so my wife, she was there every other week taking up tickets. And we had another lady that shared that job. And so he liked my wife, and so he'd be there.
Freddy always had an eye for the lady.
He likes him some women. And so in the summertime, there's a lot of women to like there,
Sure.
He'd come by there every single day. I mean, every single day. And so what we did, we got him lifeguard. We got him swimming trunks. Mm-hmm. Now he can't swim a lick, but we got him swimming trunks, and it had a lifeguard tag across it. And we got him a whistle, and so he can go around. He go around the pool like he's a king. He's a kingpin.
David Hasselhoff of
Oh
Clinton.
man, yeah. I mean, it was just a sight to watch him. And of course, we'd make sure he got something to eat there, But he was literally he'd be there every single day, you know, and I mean it'd be something just hilarious. Well, sometimes he'd get a little bit grubby looking there, and we had a shower up there, and I'd take him back into the shower and I'd shave him, and try to clean him up there, you know, and so that kind of got things a little bit tighter. And then that was along about the time when he started coming to all of our baseball games down at the fairgrounds. And see, the guys I was coaching in the mid-'70s, they were the same age as Freddie. Or I guess the other way, he was the same age as they were. and so they all, I mean, he knew all them guys because he'd been around Clinton and all those guys. He knew every one of them. And so he started hanging around at the baseball field. And he started out, if there was a foul ball, he just go get it. I mean, you know, he just did. And so, where'd that foul ball? Well, here, Freddie's coming back. Well, back then, baseballs cost, I think maybe $3.50, you know, $4 maybe, somewhere around $45 a dozen, maybe something like that. And it didn't take too long. Up at the fairgrounds, you got the pavilion, and over here you got East Drive, and you got stuff. There's all kind of competition for people to get a baseball, you know, if they foul it off. And so I told Freddie, I mean, he started getting those balls, and I've told people for years, he'd almost get them before they quit rolling, you know. He'd see them flying off, and here he'd go. And so he'd come back with a baseball. And so I told my buddy Gene Owens, he was coaching with me, and I said, man, we just need to start paying him. So I started paying him $5 a game. And I mean, really, if he saved you from losing one baseball, you've almost got your money back, you know. And he loved it if we ever played a doubleheader, or if something, we used to have an invitational tournament where there'd be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there'd be multiple games, you know. Yeah. And he loved that because, see, people don't give Freddie enough credit. He knows about some money, and he knows $10 is more than $5. And so he'd say me rich, you know, for the two games. I said, yeah, you're rich. But man, it was hilarious. But what he'd do, he'd get him in his left arm. He's not able to use his left arm. But so he'd get a ball and he'd kind of stick it in his arm. He'd go get another and he'd stick it in his arm. Well, we'd go along and the umpires would stop the game. Hey, we need some game balls. And wait a minute, time out, Friday. And he'd have about 4 or 5 baseballs under his arm. And so he'd reach in there and he'd throw it. The umpire might be straight ahead. He'd throw it over here, and the next one would be and so, you know, like in a major league game, you have the 7th inning stretch. Yeah. Well, we'd have the Freddy Fagan stretch there because we'd have to wait till he threw the baseballs back in. But man, I mean, we could do this whole interview just on Freddie stories. Just around sports type stuff. It's just, I mean, he's just funny. I mean, he just is. And my friend of mine, Ray Oliver, wrote that book about Freddie. Probably been 15 years ago. I mean, he nailed it. I mean, how do you put Freddie on paper? You know, but people that have known Freddie, that's him right there. He is on paper. They told the story, and the title of it was terrific. It's Freddie, a love story, and the town of Clinton basically is just, they've taken care of him. Yeah. You know, I mean, they'll people take him to the games, or they'll feed him, or they'll do this or do that, and you know, I mean, people just looked out for him, you know, for years and years.
When I first started coming up with this idea to reach out to you, I told a couple of my friends, I said, hey, I think I'm gonna call Alvin, see if he'll be willing to do the show, and every one of them said, you could do 2 parts. You could do Alvin, his life, and then just do Alvin and Freddie.
Oh,
you know?
I wouldn't disagree with that at all.
Well, and I want to tell you, I talked to Ryan, and I thought maybe we should bring Freddie in and do this. And Ryan said, no, I'm afraid the FCC will pull our license.
Well, that's very true. And many times it's loud and clear. You know, sometimes people have told me, man, I don't understand. How do you understand? I don't understand Freddie. But then there's other times, man, it's loud and clear. It doesn't matter whether it's me or somebody else, you know. But I've told people for years, yeah, you can't understand him. My problem is I can't.
Talk a little bit about, you told me a story about when we were at your house, you said that Freddie's a whole lot smarter than people think he is. and that he can say some things sometimes that you kind of you hear it and then you walk away scratching your head and think about it and you go, well, I mean, tell the story about the lawnmower.
Oh man. When we first moved in our house, we didn't have central heating there. We had this huge attic fan, and in the summertime, if you open up some windows, that attic fan, man, it'd stir the air, real well. So we were laying down, we were upstairs. Attic fan was going, and it was probably 11:30, something like that. And all of a sudden, you hear this this motor. I'm about half asleep, and I asked my wife, "What in the world is that?" And she, I don't know. Go check on it. What that is. And so I went to the upstairs window, and you could tell the noise was coming over from Freddy's house. And I said, hell, I think that's a lawnmower. And so I put on some clothes and walked over there. And sure enough, it's pitch black dark, and Freddy's out there with a push mower mowing the grass. And I went over there. I said, Freddy, what are you doing? I can't repeat exactly the reply, but it had to do with such and such mow. And I said, why don't you wait till tomorrow and mow? And I can't repeat the first part of what he said, but it ended up being hot. And so he decided right now is as good as any.
So, I mean, like, I know I know Freddie traveled with you for years when you were coaching on road games, and I know, he was there at, of course, all the home games. Over that time, I mean, the friendship that you got and the stories and the miles you traveled together, how's that friendship with him, do you think, changed you as a person?
When I started doing that, taking him, I mean, literally he would ride with us on the bus, and man, if somebody didn't pick him up to get him to where you're going to load the bus, I mean, you had some tough times ahead, because he would let you know that he was ready, But when we started doing all that, I mean, it wasn't like I had some like social plan, going.
And Alvin, I just want you to know that's the best part of this story is that. When you were telling me this at home, at your house, it's just how organic it developed. I mean, y'all just lived life together, and you built a friendship like everybody else does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want you to know when we were at your house, you were telling me about visiting him, and I didn't because I didn't want to. But I almost got a little choked up because you were telling me about visiting him in the nursing home, and you stopped for a second, looked out your window, and you said, Freddie's my best friend.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, it was powerful. Yeah. I mean, it really was. And
well, and he is. And I know, I mean, there's a lot of people do a lot of different things and have gone out of the way to help him, to take him places or do this or do that, And hey, I'm glad to have, But he's just a social kind of guy. He wants to be where the action is, If it's a ball game, fine. If it's, we've gone to weddings, we've gone to funerals, we've been all over the place. What he did one time, I would call him. Now here's a concept. Freddie's got a cell phone. I mean, that's a concept right there, And but it comes in handy because there's a lot of times I go down to the towers to pick him up. Well, one time we were going down to Applebee's. They had a fundraiser, a pancake breakfast fundraiser. I'd ask Freddie, you want to go to pancakes tomorrow? Yeah. I said, all right, I'll be by to get you. I went down by there and I looked all over creation, and they said, oh, well, he took off with somebody. He beat me to Applebee's. But he it's just. It's just amazing the stuff, and he would go to the games, and there'd be a lot of times these other coaches or people at the other school, you get off the bus and come in. If he wasn't there, it's almost before they greeted you. Where's Freddie? Is he not here today? Where's Freddie? Yeah. So it kind of got to where it was a known thing, and he was going to be there. But I mean, what he would do though, I mean, it's just like in basketball. he used to get at halftime. He'd go out and get a ball, and he can't use his left arm, so he'd get a ball and he'd start pumping that ball, like he's doing a granny shot, and he'd sling it at the backboard. And percentages weren't real high. Let me just say that. But what would happen? These kids would come out of the stands, and they'd make a mad rush to go get that ball. And usually, you'd think kids would do that because they wanted to shoot. They went to get the ball. They'd race to get that ball to get it back to Freddie so he could shoot. I mean, who does that for? He had a grip on these kids. They knew Freddie was going to shoot. He's going to shoot that ball.
Yeah.
But man, there's just stories. I mean, it's incredible. I told you that one about where at the umpire.
Yeah, you got to tell that one. That's a good
Got to
one.
tell this. This was a guy. We had him one game at Oak Ridge, and I don't think I told you. I didn't tell this part of it, but he was behind the plate at Oak Ridge. You probably know a guy from Lake City named Tommy Slover.
Oh yeah, I know Tommy.
Tommy was umpiring the bases.
Okay.
And he knew Freddie. Well, this guy, I'm not going to name this guy's name, but he was behind the plate. And so what Freddie has done for years in baseball, if the pitcher would be winding up and he'd be at what they call the balance point, your one foot's up in the air, way before you've delivered the ball yet, he's already calling strikes. Well, we're down at Oak Ridge. And this guy's umping behind the plate. He didn't like that. So he took his mask off and pointed to the visitor stands and says, all right, who that is hollering strikes over there, I want you to stop it right now. Well, people just started horse laughing. I mean, everybody knew it was Freddie.
Right.
What are you doing, Even Tommy Slover, he's out at first base. He's kind of going, oh, man, I can't believe he just said that. Does he not know Freddie?
Yeah.
Well, seemed like it was within a week. We had a game at the fairgrounds, and I was there early watching the JV play. And the guy that was doing our JV was a guy named Jason Rohde. Well, Jason came up to me, and he said, Coach, I'm going to need your help. And, we're just watching the JV game, and I thought, what do you mean need my help? What are you talking about? He said, that old guy umpiring, he said he's going to throw Freddie out. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, he's throwing Freddie out.
He might have not made it out of town.
No. I said, well, you just wait. You wait till this half inning's over, and we'll get this straightened out. So when the half inning's over, I went out on the field. Again, I'm not going to say his name, but probably all you need to know is he was umping a JV game.
Leave it at that.
I will say that. And so I go out and I said, we got some kind of problem or something going on. What's going on? He said, oh, that old guy, he said, he's hollering all that stuff. He said, I'm not putting up with it. I said, oh, come on, man. I said, that's just Freddie. He's been doing that for 35 years. He said, well, you can't tell me if he didn't holler a bunch of that stuff at your team that you wouldn't be upset about him hollering at all that stuff at your team. I said, did you not hear what I just said? He's been doing that for 35 years. He hollers at our team. He hollers at the opponent. He hollers at the umpires. That's just Freddie. Well, I'm not putting up with it. And I told him, I said, look, I don't care what you got to do, but you're not kicking him out of this ball game. I'm telling you that right now. So you got to deal with it somehow because you're not going to do that. I'm telling you right now, you're not doing that. And so Freddie, if he gets all upset and mad, his lower lip starts quivering. So I saw him over there. He knew what was going on. He knew I was coming to I had his back.
Defense.
So I got over there and his lips just shaking. So the JV game gets over, and so the press box was here. And so the umpire, he was coming around this way. And he came back around this way behind the press box. And Freddie had his game plan going. So Freddie's coming around this way, and I saw it live and in person. He's coming around behind the press box, and he looked him dead in the eye. And he said, damn jackass. So, oh, man.
So Freddie had his day.
He got his 2 cents in right there. But man, he had, and I tell you, you know Nate Stacker. We were riding on the bus. We got on the bus there, and we're going by Oak Ridge Highway there, coming off from the high school, and came in behind Holly Gamble Funeral Home. And so Freddie was talking about the funeral home. His dad had recently passed away, and that really bothered Fred. And he started talking about the funeral home. Well, Nate couldn't quite understand what he's saying, so I had to interpret a little bit. I said, well, Nate, I said, Freddie's telling about his dad at the funeral home. You remember I told Nate about it. I said, you remember me telling you about Freddie's dad passing away? Oh, yeah. He said, Fred, I'm sorry about that. Well, that kind of went right over right over Freddie's head. He said, me die, me funeral home. I said, oh, you gonna be at the funeral home? Yes, but he said, well, you die, you funeral home? I said, yeah, I'll be at the funeral home. I said, if I die, you gonna come up and see me? He said, yeah. And he said, you die? Me keys. He wanted my keys to the first. I said, dang, Freddie. But then he nailed this though, and he nailed this. He said, me die. Downtown closed, school out.
and that's exactly that's exactly what'll happen.
That's what's going to happen. But he nailed that. So they're just story after story after story on Freddie, and I've witnessed a bunch of them.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this last one. For you, for Alvin Taylor, what have you learned from him? What's he taught you?
Well, I think maybe God's got a sense of humor. I think maybe. I'm not so sure why God didn't put him here with us, just to see how people would react. Mm-hmm. But as far as my part, I think it would to be more aware of other people around you. Obviously, there's a lot of people around you. They may not have disabilities that Freddie deals with, or problems that he's dealt with, physically or whatever. But be more aware of your surroundings and the people, and more attentive to what to do. A lot of times with Freddie, to be honest, and this is no knock on anybody, people don't understand what he's trying to say, mm-hmm. and they don't take the time to listen to what he's trying to say, or get somebody to help them to interpret what he's trying to say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that would be more attentive, because of him. And but man, he's just incredible. He goes around. He's in the towers, and he used to be on the third floor, and they got elevators. I mean, it wasn't like he could negotiate, but then there was a room open on the first floor, and they want to move him down to the first floor. The family did. So when they had to take all his stuff down, and this was like 15 years ago, they counted out over 1,000 T-shirts, sweatshirts that he had people to get. But I bet you anything, he's acquired at least 1,000 in the last 15 years. Because if you go somewhere with him, everybody's got something to give him.
Sure. I've given him shirts for my school.
Last week, for example, his brother, I told him if there's any way, see now he's confined, he's in a wheelchair. If there's any way they could get him to the fairgrounds. Sevier County was playing Clinton last Thursday night. And so he's known my son, he coaches at Sevier County. He's known Casey since Casey was born in 1979. He's just known him his whole life. And so he's all about Casey. So his brother John got him down to the field. Before that sucker left the field, he got a purple shirt from Sevier County. He got a baseball that was autographed by the Sevier County team. Clinton coaches gave him an orange shirt and a black shirt. And then this parent from Sevier County, it was getting kind of cool, and they had a blanket. Daggone if he didn't get a blanket snookered out of him. And he left the fairgrounds with all that stuff before,
Well, again, I kind of being repetitive, but my most favorite thing about your all's relationship is, like you said, it wasn't a social movement. It wasn't you just developed a friendship with another human being, and I think that's a fantastic story. And I just I knew when I wanted to sit down and talk to you, there's just no way that we could do it without talking about Freddie.
Yeah,
there's just no way.
I mean, it's just you just can't get me started, because they're just story after story, and they're all hilarious. But like when he was shooting hoops in halftime, mm-hmm. he loves it. People watching him, being there, being part.
Yeah.
He loves at a ball game, or he'll go to church, and he just loves that interaction, and it's amazing.
Fantastic.
I mean, it really is.
Well, let's flip back to your story, and I'm still in a little line here from Thomas Wolfe. He's famous for coining that phrase, "You can never go home again."
Yeah.
But that wasn't true for you.
Right.
So how did you feel when you came back? Were you afraid if I come back to Clinton and I don't do well, it'll be short-lived, or because the best recipe for a coach is winning. If you win, you're a good coach.
Yeah.
If you don't win, you're not.
Well, probably one good thing, and in some ways it was a little bit awkward, I guess, in some ways, because see, that had only been 4 years, my 4 years of college, and then boom, here I'm back. There were siblings of kids that I went to high school with, and so they kind of always knew me by first name. Well, now you got to cut that off. That's no more. And so that was a little bit awkward. And then probably, I don't know if some people maybe parents maybe thought they could. I don't know if they thought they'd take advantage because they thought they had an in, they knew you or whatever, and that probably factored in somewhat because, back then, we had to make cuts and all that stuff. Everybody didn't make the team. Everybody wasn't in the starting lineup. But man, I tell you what, in the 70s, Clinton baseball was loaded, and so was like Clinton basketball when I was helping Lockard. Back then, what we had, Norwood Junior High. Back then it was junior high. When I first came in, it was Clinton Senior High. See, we didn't have ninth graders; they were to junior highs. But Norwood Junior High, man, every year through basically the whole decade of the 70s, they had just incredible athletes that were coming to Clinton, playing football, basketball, baseball, whatever. And so really during those times, I didn't have anything to do with football, but basketball was really good. Baseball was really good. I got spoiled, and so that kind of helped things, as far as the sports end of it goes,
So, as you know, baseball's a tough sport. It's a sport of failure. If you're fantastic, you fail 70% of the time. If you go to the major leagues and you hit 300, you play long enough, you're going to go to the Hall of Fame,
right?
Which means you fail 70% of the time.
You don't want that percentage as a brain surgeon.
No,
sure.
You do not. So when you're teaching high school guys the game, how do you balance teaching the technical side of baseball, how to hit, how to throw, how to hit the cutoff man, all that kind of stuff, and the mental side? Because the fact is, when that 16-year-old goes up to the plate, he's going to fail more times than he succeeds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And by a large margin.
Right.
How do you teach that with the young guys?
I think I evolved in that because when I first came in, I've always kidded these guys. Our season started in the spring of 73. When the season got started, I was still 22 years old. I've kidded I think some of the guys coaching, or some of my players, I think they might have been older than me at the time, But I know I evolved over time. Some of that stuff, when we were really, really good. We got back then, it's called sub-state, but that's the state quarterfinals. We were in the last eight teams of state in 74 and 76. We should have won it in 75. So those teams kind of spoil you, and we weren't winning every single game, but we were winning our share, and maybe later some of that stuff came to light, and I'll be honest, I didn't handle some of it very well because I was just spoiled. Hey, we ought to be doing better than this, But what I learned and picked up, and then since then, I've passed on to Casey or any other younger coaches that have asked me, try to pick my brain about certain things. Everybody as a player, doesn't matter what sport you're coaching, but everybody's probably played that sport. The position that you played. You better learn everything you can learn from a position that you didn't play. Like when I was playing, I pitched, played first base, played in summertime, played some shortstop. I knew about playing those positions. I didn't know anything about catching. That's a prime position. You better you better find out something about catching, about your footwork and blocking and throwing and all that stuff. So I think you gotta always look to grow, to learn, and really, if you get to the point where you're not doing that, you don't need to be coaching. I mean, you just don't. The success and failure stuff, man, that's tough, and a lot of times it may not be till a guy might be a senior, maybe as a sophomore he's really struggling, or definitely as a freshman, now they're really struggling. So you gotta hang with them, and what's really tough is, and I really hated to have to do this. Later it was with ninth graders and some sophomores, but man, I hated to make cuts. I mean, I hated to make cuts, and I hated to have to raise money. And every year you got to do both.
You got to do both.
You got to do both. But especially like with a ninth grader, you got some little skinny ninth grader that weighs 140 pounds, and you think, well, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to grow or develop or whatever. And you might say, well, we've already got X number, that's all we need. And so you may cut this kid, and you don't know if that kid's going to come back or not. What if that kid does grow and get better? And I know early we weren't cutting ninth graders because it was just 10 through 12, but we had some sophomores. And see, when I first started coaching, there wasn't any schools around in baseball that had JV. Like now you can say, okay, we'll take a chance on this kid. We'll keep him around for a year or two, and if he pans out, hey, that's great. Back then, there weren't any schools that had JV, nobody. And so we would be cutting some 10th graders because like early when I started in the 70s, those teams were really good. And then later on, same way, in other years. And you cut a guy as a 10th grader, and man, we cut some guys. Luckily, some of them came back. Some of them came back and started. We had a boy from Claxton named Charlie Matters. He got cut as a sophomore. And see, now it's a little bit different because, I was tied up in basketball. And so basketball, it'd go from October to, usually we'd be pretty good. It'd be up into March. Well, there's an overlap between the two. It's hard picking teams, And Charlie got cut, and then he came out next year. I mean, he was the best outfielder we had for the next 2 years.
Developed a lot in a year.
Yeah, and man, that's tough because you just don't know. And so I mean, you kind of learn the numbers of how many you'd like to have, and then now it's changed from when I first started coaching because now you also have ninth graders. Mm-hmm. And so now most programs now, they'll have. We used to carry 18. That's all we had when I first started coaching. We'd carry 18 because you just get into a number problem. You got guys. You carried 25 guys. What are you doing? There's no JV. Know, but so see now you got JV, and so you can keep above 18. A lot of guys probably keep 18 or 20 on the varsity, and a few of them are doubling up. They're playing JV and varsity, but we didn't have that luxury back then. So a lot of it you evolve over time, and I remember the latter part of my coaching time, man, we got big on the small ball. And when I first started coaching, man, we just didn't do that. But guys later on, they couldn't hit like some of these guys had when I first started coaching, and that has changed. Back when I first started coaching, hell, we were swinging wooden bats, and that a lot of things have evolved. But we got to where we'd capitalize on small ball, stealing and bunting and squeezing. I mean, not a real sexy thing, but we beat Oak Ridge one night on a walk-off suicide squeeze. Yeah. And that's not as sexy as hitting one over the fence, but hey, it's a W, baby.
But that's right. When you look back in the book, it goes in. Well, I mean, like when my wife and I, when our daughter was playing softball, Ginger, she didn't care much about baseball, softball, but when Taylor started playing, like she all of a sudden she had literally skin in the game, and she understood. Oh, that's why you're supposed to hit behind the runner. I mean, like, which before, like, it didn't make any, like you got a runner standing at second with one out. Yeah. You hit the ball to the shortstop, he doesn't move. Yeah. You got a runner standing at second with one out, and you hit it behind him. Well, he just moved 90 feet, and he's closer to scoring. So as I like to tell her, there's two things about baseball: not all outs are bad, and nothing good comes from strikeout. I mean, that's not all outs are bad, and nothing good comes from a strikeout.
Unless it's your opponent, right?
That's right. So a lot of high school athletes, you hear it from them all the time, talk about their coaches as like instrumental figures in their lives at pivotal times as they're growing up. How important was that role to you? And did you see yourself as a mentor to your players, both on and off the field?
I think I have more now, more since I've gotten out, because there's been a lot of guys reach out to me. Even during COVID, I'd get some calls, people just checking in, see, hey, you doing okay? Or, wondering about you, whatever. A lot of times there's been some gatherings. Like last spring, we had a reunion we went up to Harrison's, and then we had a reunion at the field for the team of 1974. And 50-year reunion for those guys. Man, that's hard to believe. But they said a bunch of things that is more appreciative now, and they probably wouldn't have said, in 74 or 75 or whatever.
Probably wouldn't have known how to say it.
Well, yeah, and so I think over time, I think there's been a lot has happened. There've been a lot of good comments made that I'm very appreciative of. And usually there's been gatherings, and I've been invited to attend, and man, that's just awesome, And so I don't know at the time, that's a lot of things in coaching, I was fortunate. I don't know like how many times where you get selected like district coach of the year, whatever. You don't go into the season and say, well, hey, I think I'll be district coach of the year this year. You really appreciate it when it happens, but you probably appreciate it more later, And I think that may be true with some of the relationships, of former players, and I do really. I'm very cognizant anymore. I've tried to reach out to people if I see them, I bump into them or they call or whatever to find out what they're doing, what they've done, and tell them I'm proud of them. I do way more now than I did then. I think more so then you kind of in the moment. And there's always next year. Okay, we got this group. Okay, they're graduating, and okay, you got another group coming on. So yeah, I think that's evolved over time.
So how do you feel? I mean, you coached in the 70s, you coached in the 80s, you coached in the 90s. I mean, 36 years, 35 years you coached.
Yeah.
During that time, 35 years, how do you feel like the game evolved, and how did the players change, and how did you adjust to those things?
I think all high school sports are just way different than they were back 40, 50 years ago. Like in baseball, for example, we were using wooden bats. I mean, they've been gone for years. We didn't have courtesy runners. We didn't have the designated hitter in high school. We didn't. One thing that's changed, and I'll tell you about this organization I've got involved in. I think it kind of spawned some of this, but facilities are way better than they ever were. It's kind of gotten to be a competition in that. With for years there was no high school that had a tarp. Now everybody's got a tarp. I mean, everybody. Like with a rain situation. If you got your tarp over that infield, it's pouring down rain. Well, I mean, you can play tomorrow. The outfield might still be wet, but infield's bone dry. Or you might even play later in that day. Well, when I first started coaching, nobody had that. So there's a ton of people that had rainouts all the time. You had makeup games you had to deal with. I mean, it's got to be storming now before a game gets canceled almost,
My school is located, behind Anderson County High School, and Coach Boynton's got something going on up there on that field every day. I mean, they're building something, making something, I mean, whether they're working on the field or the facilities, I mean, something is going on up behind my school every day.
Well, and that's true for just about every high school in East Tennessee. But, a few years ago, there was no school that had like a clubhouse or dressing area or indoor cages and all that stuff. Nobody had that. Now you'd be hard pressed to find a school that does not have it. And that's just really cool. And what that does, I mean, see, like for us at Clinton, man, it was a hardship because our school was all the way across town, and so kids and softball was the same way. Kids have to drive all the way across town or get there somehow for practice. And I mean, you got kids that are ninth graders; they're not driving, and so they had to bum a ride, get there somehow. And so most places, you'd get over that. Well, see, what they'd have to do, they'd have to dress at the gym or dress out in the car in the parking lot and moon everybody on Seavers Boulevard, or whatever. But now we build a clubhouse, and then and used to we didn't have the cages. Now we had some open cages, outdoor cages, but now they got 2 cages up there that man, you can get all kind of hitting done. Well, you got groups over here hitting when you got your other groups out on the field working on infield or outfield or whatever. You alternate that around. That's changed tremendously. One rule change that changed high school baseball is a pitch count rule. Came in just a few years ago, and man, especially in tournament time, that's a deal breaker for high school because kids are required. The first cut is 25 pitches. If you throw over 25 pitches, it's required. You got to sit out 1 day. If it gets over 55, you got to sit 2 days. 75 is 3, 105 is 4, 120. If it's in the bottom of the 7th with the bases loaded and a full count, and your pitcher's on 120, he's got to come out. Doesn't matter, or it's a forfeit. That didn't used to be the rule.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean it's changed.
If he throws 121, no matter what, it's forfeit.
Forfeit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
No questions asked. That's a deal breaker when it comes tournament time.
Yeah.
Because guys, like you go to a state tournament starts on Tuesday, it's over on Friday. So if your guy on Tuesday pitches, 105, 110 pitches, he's done.
Yeah.
You're not going to see him again. Now before, and it's all for protect the kids, protect pitchers. But before, if that's your guy on Tuesday, he's probably coming back on Friday. Before if just for 2 or 3 innings, whatever to close the game out or whatever. Can't happen now.
And you're going to throw your ace.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's different.
So all that stuff is changed dramatically, and it's changed for all the schools. It's just the way everything's more legislated through the TSSAA. They changed some rules last year a couple years ago when it gets into postseason. Now regional sites, they're at one site, 4 teams at one site, and they got a best 2 out of 3 series and a sectional round. And man, it was rough back in the 70s and 80s. When you got out of the district, you got into the region was Monday, Wednesday, and what they call the sub-state was Friday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You had to win every one of them.
Right.
And, man,
that's tough to do.
That's tough sledding because you're just, pitching stuff. Now you got to win on Monday, but you don't have to win on Wednesday. See, now if you lose on Wednesday, you're on the road.
Yeah.
And actually now you're at a one.
So it's more of a
side.
loser's bracket, winner's bracket kind of thing, but you get to advance.
Yeah. Actually, that's the way it was. But then 2 years ago, they put it now. It goes to one site. There's 4 teams at one site, but you got 2 1s and 2 2s. And but before you didn't have a 2s. If you got beat, you were out.
So over 35 years, you've been doing this. What are some of your most rewarding experiences you had at coaching, or even teaching? I mean, because you've been doing. I know you were in the classroom. You've also been an administrator. You've had your fingerprints on a lot of things at Clinton High School and some even at Anderson County High School. You were the answer to a trivia question on one of our ball games one night.
Yeah.
So through all this, what has been some of your most rewarding experiences?
Probably that I haven't gotten a divorce. And my son still speaks to me.
That's an accomplishment.
Well, what happened? Like my wife, man, she's just a sweetheart. I mean, you look back, and again, talking about my mom, all the sacrifices she made, but like my wife, There was years I was coaching basketball and baseball, and so I'd start in October, and I'd be tied up until toward the end of May, third week, fourth, May, just depending on how far you advance in baseball. And then when our son was born, I mean, it was all on her. I mean, she I'd drop him off in the morning, but those days I wouldn't see him the rest of the day because he'd be in bed by the time I get home, and it was all on her. And man, she's just terrific. She just I don't know. I mean, any coach, doesn't matter what the sport is, that's married, man, that takes a toll, because you're not at home. And that would be, in some ways, that would be a regret I would have. I missed a lot, But if you're coaching, that's just what it is. I mean, I guess the same way somebody that's in sales and they got to travel a lot,
Right.
But then my son, he's been super. I mean, there's pictures when he was a little guy, and he'd be in a team picture there. I was number 44, and he'd get him a 44 shirt. And so she'd bring him down to the field.
Who was your 44 after? Was that your number in school, or did you pick it first?
Well, no, I just kind of liked that number. I always liked that number. No,
Thought you might have picked it for Hank Aaron.
Well, no, but that'd been a good one, though. But no, I don't know. I just always have liked that number. I should have picked 32 because Sandy Koufax was my main man. I don't know why I didn't do 32.
What was it? They call the left arm of God. Yeah, is that what they call it?
Yeah. But Casey, he was always around the team, and that worked out good. And then as he got older, it was a big relief because he could flat out play. Mm-hmm. And so if you're you're coaching your son, you're hoping all you can hope that he's going to be a player. And so he was kind of a sponge in baseball and basketball. He would always ask questions. And you could kind of tell that he might eventually get into coaching, but that was all his thing. But he was a terrific athlete in basketball and baseball, and so that was, both of those are very rewarding. It's been really rewarding. I've had a bunch of guys coaching with me, and one of my best buddies, Gene Owens. We were together for over 30 years, and we grew up in Marlow. And hey, we're still best friends today, so we're still speaking and talking.
That's good.
And that's a good thing. But I had Gene coach for years, over 30 years we were together. Jim Payne, he coached with me there for a while. Mike Harmon coached with me there for a while. Had 2 or 3 players, Rob Ivy and Robert Brown. They coached with me for a while. Jason Rhodey did, and then later on we got Nate. Mm-hmm. Man, I love Nate Stacker. He was with us right there. And all those guys that I just named, man, we just always got along. And I knew those guys, they weren't going to knife me in the back and try to undercut me or second guess, whatever. We just all got along just very, very well. And down through the years, overall, I think I had real good relations with parents, and overall, I think with players as well. I mean, it goes back to Fleetwood Mac song. I don't remember. I think it's on that Dreams album. Where there's one line: "Players love you when they're playing." I think
that's a good record too.
I think that's probably true. The ones that still like me might have been the ones that were playing. But I always really tried to be fair. I mean, I didn't cut somebody just out of spite or whatever. I just don't get it when parents put a lot of blame on the coaches. Well, he's not playing the right boys. My boy, he's always played shortstop or whatever. I mean, what coach is going to put kids out there that you think they're going to screw up,
right. Or you don't think you can win with?
We got a kid over here. Yeah, he's better, but we're going to put this boy out here because he's probably going to screw up, And so I never did quite understand all that, but by and large, I think had a good relationship with majority of the parents, and it's kind of I had a good relationship with the other coaches. We all trying to beat each other, but here's something. I had 2 guys that were coaching at different times at Oak Ridge, and Oak Ridge. I mean, to me, Oak Ridge is the rival. I know some people probably say AC, but for me, it's Oak Ridge. That goes back to my day. Oak Ridge, 2 coaches at Oak Ridge asked me to come and speak to their team. Now, who would have ever thought that? Somebody from
Right.
Clinton is going to go speak to the Oak Ridge Wildcats. You
Yeah.
know, but man, I was honored that they asked.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of good about everything they ask. And actually, I've spoken at a couple of funerals. Man, that's kind of
Tough.
bittersweet. But I was honored that I got asked. So yeah, I mean, they just a lot of things that just kind of tie that in. But I don't know in the moment, any kind of thing. The way I always look at athletics, the players run the show. I mean, the players make it. I mentioned this. I was fortunate. I got selected into the Tennessee Baseball Coaches Hall of Fame. I had to make a speech, and that was the gist of my speech: is that good players make good coaches. Now, coaches can bring out things and pull things together and do all that, but at the end of the day, you can bring them together and pull them together and whatever you're trying to do. If that team can't play, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
And so I was fortunate enough to have some really good teams with really good players that made things a whole lot easier. And I use Joe Torre as an example. Joe Torre got fired by the Mets and the Braves and I think maybe somebody else because he
couldn't coach.
He didn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
He didn't have a clue what he's doing. He got with the Yankees.
And all of a sudden, he got a lot smarter.
He got smart. He had Jeter and Mariano and Alex Rodriguez and Bernie Williams. He got smart.
Jorge
there.
Posada.
I mean, you just named the whole lineup, and all of a sudden he just got smart.
Yeah.
They won multiple World Series,
3 in a row.
But I used Joe Torre in that speech, and I mean I fully agree with that. I mean, you can't tell me that Torre was that much worse with he coached the Dodgers. He managed the Dodgers. With the Dodgers or the Mets or the Braves, you can't tell me he was that much worse
Right.
than when he had those guys with the Yankees.
It's amazing how much better you get when you got Hall of Famers.
Oh man, yeah, no joke. And so that's true for high school guys. When you got guys that are going to go to, going to go on to college and play some ball, or guys that will try to do what you want them to do and all that, But at the end of the day, I mean, it's a player's game. I don't care what sport you're talking about. You can do all the X's and O's you want to do, but it's not going to work, if you don't have the players.
Well, as we round third and head for home here, this last section, it's just a lot about, because baseball is such a unique game. I mean, it is so different than, most of the time in football, if you got the better players, you're going to win. I mean, more times than not. But baseball, man, you march a guy out there that's pitching the game of his life, you could put the 27 Yankees out there and you may not win.
Yeah.
I mean, if a guy's hitting his spots and throwing those balls that look like strikes and strikes that look like balls, I mean, it's tough to win. So I've entitled this last section you brought up the Yankees, so I've entitled this last section a little homage to Yogi Berra. Baseball's 90% mental and the other half is physical. So Gary Houck, a guy that we both know, he was a long-time high school umpire. And he once told me over his career, there were 2 guys when he was an umpire that when they hit the ball, that it sounded just totally different than any high school player he ever saw play. He told me that if he heard one of those 2 guys hit a baseball with his eyes closed, he could tell you who they were. And those 2 guys are Todd Helton, who just recently went into the Hall of Fame, and Sean Summers, who played at Oak Ridge. You coached against those guys.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately. Talk
about that a little bit. Talk about your experience with those 2 guys.
Well, I think first of all, Gary, he didn't get out enough because there were some Central guys that could hit it.
Bubba Trammell.
Bubba Trammell being one, Chris Freeman being another. No, really, Central had some guys that were just golly bum. They could flat out hit. Now, not anybody any more close to Helton. I mean, he's just a cut above anybody I've ever seen. I mean, it's no contest. It's just no contest.
Coach, I will tell you this. I wasn't there, but Todd Helton hit a ball I've heard this story 100 times, and if everybody who told me this story, they all swear that they were there. If they were, there'd have been 25,000 people at Anderson County High School baseball field when he hit one down into the football field.
Yep.
And that was back when the fences were back. That you might go a whole season, you might not have 10 home runs hit by either side.
Yeah.
But he hit the ball out of the stadium, and it hit on that road and bounced up into the football stadium, bounced down the stadium seats onto the field.
Yeah.
And I was talking this week with Jerry Huckabee, and I said, everybody I talked to says they were there that night. And he said, well, I wasn't there, but I can tell you it happened because I was on the football field and I saw the ball roll out on the field. And I was like, man, a high school kid hit a ball that far.
He just, I think I might have told you, and it's just my opinion, and I had this opinion well before he got selected into the Hall of Fame. In my opinion, he is the best baseball player that's ever come out of the state of Tennessee.
And that's saying something. Mookie Betts is from Tennessee.
I'm telling you,
we've had some.
He's the best. He's the best ever. That came not East Tennessee, the whole state of Tennessee. And I've asked different people who's from Tennessee that would be better than Todd Helton. I've not had anybody that tell me a name that would top him. Now Mookie may when he ends up his career, but man, it's something else. But now Central, they had a guy named Mike Nipper. Man, he could crush a baseball. They had a guy named Stan. Oh gosh, can't think of Stan's last name. Man, he could flat out hit. Chris Freeman was a good hitter. Bubba Trammell, he could wear it out. But none of those guys. That guy named Pug Wood was really good. None of them. Nobody that we saw in 35 years would even touch Todd Helton. Nobody. And the thing is, people don't realize this. Obviously, things worked out well for him. I think he could have made it in the major leagues as a pitcher.
Well, I was at UT when Helton was there, and this was way before the Tony Vitello days, and you could go down there and just get a ticket and walk in and sit in. And I remember, Helton would play first base for 8 innings, and then he'd come in the ninth, and as a closer, throwing straight 94, 95, and it was right on the black.
Yeah.
And he'd come in, and I saw him, he'd throw 9, 10, 11, 12 pitches, and it was over. I mean, and there wasn't your infielders didn't really have to do a lot. Back in the old Negro League days, Satchel Paige, he used to tell his outfielders, sit down. There's many nights that Helton could have done the same. Just, y'all sit down out there. I'll take care of this.
He's something else. Now, Sean Summers, he was really good, too. He was shortstop, and Sean got drafted. But I don't know what the story was in baseball.
He went to UT as a punt returner, I think.
Well, and he played the whole time at UT, and he was a really good football player. And so I don't know. I guess maybe he just liked football better. I guess and Helton was a really good football player too. And of course, there's a guy a little bit behind him nudged him out. A guy named Peyton Manning.
He did okay.
But, he did all right. But I don't know what Sean's story was as far as playing. I don't know if they told him he couldn't do both. That's kind of hard to believe because Helton was, but he didn't play. He didn't play baseball at UT. But man, he was good. There's no two ways around it. It just. But there's just no comparison on Helton.
Well, when I was at your home, you shared some unique stories about some of the things. As we said, baseball is such a unique game. You shared some unique stories and experiences you had where there were some pretty exceptional things that happened when you were coaching. You won a game, I think, 1-0 or something. When you did you get one hit or no hit?
We had one runner, got no hit.
Tell that story.
We were playing Central, and they were throwing this kid named Steve Searcy. Well, nobody knew it at the time, but Steve Searcy was recruited by Tennessee. But he also got drafted. He played in the major leagues about 7 or 8 years, left-handed pitcher. And man, he was just, if we hit Steve Searcy, it wasn't going to go far, So we were the, I think we were the home team maybe. We're playing loser bracket final at old Bill Meyer Stadium, and Searcy's pitching. Mm-hmm. And our leadoff guy was a boy who played center fielder named John Miller, and John could fly. He was a tailback in football.
I know John. He was kind of Dragon legend.
Yeah,
Lots
man,
of sports.
he could fly in football, and in baseball, man, he could track them down. And so if he got on base, I mean, he's gonna steal second, and probably gonna steal third, you know. So he's leading off the game. He drops a bunt down. Might be questionable whether it was a hit or not. Their third baseman bobbled it, and as fast as John was, I thought it probably be scored a hit anyway because he's probably going to beat it out. But this was district tournament, so they had an official score, and he scored it in error. And so, okay, so he's on first base, leadoff batter. He steals second base. All right, Cersei tries to pick him off at second, and the ball didn't get away far. Maybe from here, the wall over there, not too far. But as soon as it got away, he took off for third. So he's on third base, and then Cersei threw a pitch in the dirt. I don't remember if it was the very next batter or, you know, two batters later, because he was a leadoff guy. Anyway, he threw a pitch in the dirt that the catcher blocked, and it kicked away for just a few feet. And John, just his own instincts, he just took off and scored. He was the only base runner we had in that ball game. We didn't get a hit. We didn't hit one that they booted, and we got on by an error. He didn't walk anybody. He didn't hit anybody. We had no more base runners the whole game.
So you didn't get a hit. You didn't get an official hit. You got on base with an error.
We had one guy got on base. That's it. I mean, you can't top that. I mean, somehow you got to get on base and come around and score. And we did that. We beat them 1-0.
Wow.
And man, I've never seen that before. No hits, no errors, there wasn't anything that we did to get on base, and then he scored. We had a kid named Aaron Porter in the early 2000s. Man, it's hard to do also on an individual basis. He got hits in 13 consecutive at-bats. Now, I mean, think about that. I mean, that's over multiple games, you know, but our record had been 8 consecutive hits, you know. And so he had tied it. He was sitting on 8. So he knew he was right there. Mm-hmm. He was tied for the record. We were playing Maryville at home up here at the fairgrounds. And man, he had him a game. He went 5 for 5 against Maryville and ended up, that was his 13th consecutive base hit.
Wow.
And man, you could take a fun go bat and throw it up and have a hard time hitting 13.
You could.
Getting 13 consecutive hits. Then we had a kid named Tim Stamey. He hit 3 grand slams basically in a week. Technically, it was on 8 days. 3 grand slams in 8.
Is that E.T.'s?
That's E.T.'s son.
Son, okay.
Yeah, a good hitter. He's a good hitter. But he hit 3 grand slams in 8 days. Now, most guys, they don't even come to bat with the bases loaded 3 times probably in a season. You know,
Right.
He came up 3 times in 8 days and jacked grand slams, and never had that happen again. That's pretty remarkable. We had a pitcher named Matt Lopez.
I remember Matt.
He was a terrific pitcher. He's one of the best pitchers ever been at Clinton. He struck out 20 batters in a 7-inning game. 20 batters. Now, part of it is
Wow.
you got to have a little help, but part of it, our catcher missed 2 or 3 strikes. And so
he had to pitch again.
We got 4 outs
Okay.
in multiple innings, but he had 20 strikeouts in a 7-inning game. And then in 97, our team, that was one of the best teams ever been at Clinton, they had a stretch where they won 20 consecutive games. Man, that's hard to do in baseball. Because like I just said, you're playing Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Back then that was district, just Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Non-district were Tuesday and Thursday or maybe Saturday. You know, you're playing 4, 5, 6 games a week, you know. They won 20 consecutive games. And there's no Clinton team fairly even close to that. Some got like 12, 13, something like that. But that team also, they hit back to back to back in one inning, and in that same inning, we hit 5 home runs in that one inning.
Wow.
5 home runs in one inning. I had some teams didn't hit 5 home runs for the year.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about baseball. You can. I've told my wife. I mean, the game's been around for 100+ years, and you still can see some things that have never happened before.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, still. I mean, like this event, that event never happened before until today.
Right.
You know, and it's just. I tell people cause I'm a huge baseball fan, as you know, and I tell people all the time, you know, baseball's chess. everything else is checkers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just. I mean, I like checkers. I like it, but baseball's chess.
Well, and one thing funny was Central. We beat them 1-0 in that game. We beat them another time, 1-0, and got no hit. We got a runner on first. I think he may stole second. We bunted him third, squeezed him in about the fourth or fifth inning, and that was it. We won. So we got no hit twice and won.
Won both of them. Not too many people could say that.
No, not too often.
So, I mean, you've made so many significant contributions on the field and off the field at Clinton High School. I mean, I know you've been involved in the Clinton Hall of Fame activities that are going on around campus. Talk about some of those things, some of those accomplishments and achievements for you.
Tell you one thing that I'm really proud of had to do with the county coaches. At one time, the coaches weren't getting compensated much at all. When I first started coaching, this is like crazy. Of course, I know it's been, back in the Stone Age. Head football and head basketball coaches were making $600 to coach. I was making $300 as assistant basketball and $300 as a head baseball. That's it. Clinton had a guy as football coach named Ken Honey. And Ken had played football at UT as fullback, and then he played a little bit in the NFL with the Jets. Well, he came to Clinton. He married a Clinton girl. He came to Clinton. He was coaching. He was making $600. Well, all of a sudden, he left and went to Cookeville. And everybody's like, oh, what in the world? Why would he leave? Why did he go to Cookeville? Clinton was paying $600. Cookeville at the time was paying $3,500.
Wow.
So he left and he went to Cookeville. Well, people, we can't have that. We can't have our coaches leaving. We got to pay them better than that. That's what other people do. So they put this index in the mid 1970s, and it was based on like head football and head basketball was top. Assistants was like the next level, and then minor sports would be a little bit below that. And so football and basketball made $3,600, and assistants made $1,800. And mine, I was making $1,260. This was in mid-70s. Well, I'd been doing that for mucho years, and by the late 90s, those supplements hadn't changed. I mean, it had been close to 20, 25 years. They hadn't changed. You didn't get a dime more than what was handed in the mid-70s. Mm-hmm. And, man, that just wasn't right. So we'd go around to our ball games. I talked to these other coaches. What kind of supplement are you making? And assistant coaches were making double what I was making. They were making about $2,500. I was making $1,260, and the head coaches were making about $35. So they're 3 times what I was making. Well, basketball coaches at one time in football, $3,600 was pretty good, but then other systems started climbing on up. Well, then that $3,600 wasn't that good. So I got our coaches together, and what we would do, we'd go to school, but well, we can't negotiate that this year. This year we're doing this and this and this. You got to run it through the ACEA. Well, we'd go to ACEA. Well, now next year we're going to we're going to negotiate this and this and this. So we would just kind of get kicked to the curb, and one more year led to another year, led to another year, and so finally we just decided that, man, that's it. We're going to take a stand. So I typed up a petition, and every one of our coaches that were on tenure signed that petition that if this didn't get addressed, we're walking, because everybody had a teaching spot, Mm-hmm. So I wasn't going to be losing a whole lot if my $1,260 got sliced off. And we did the same thing with Anderson County kids, teachers, or coaches. But some of their guys weren't on tenure, so we didn't ask them to sign that. And so finally, in the late 90s, that did get addressed to where the supplements are way, way better than they ever were. And I don't know today. I've been removed from it there for a while, but at that time it was some of the best in the state, mm-hmm. and it would bump up a little bit each year. I mean, doesn't matter what you're doing, you should be a little bit better this year than you were last year, so you should get a little bit more, a little bit more money. And there for quite a long time, coaches would come up to me just out of the clear blue and shake my hand and say, "Man, I really appreciate you." I said, "Well, what have I done now? Well, weren't you the one that helped on that coaching supplement index?" I said, "Well, yeah. Well, I really appreciate you." And so that's gone on now for going on 30 years. that coaches in Anderson County are getting way better compensated than they used to get. And man, I'm proud of that. I'm not getting any of it, but I'm glad
Right.
I'm glad they are. The Wall of Fame is it's really unique and it's really cool. It's not based on what somebody did when they were in school. You can be an all-state quarterback or point guard, or it doesn't matter. It's what you've accomplished after school. And like last year, we recognized a guy who he's daggone brigadier general. We had a doctor. We had a guy, education professor at the University of South Carolina. We had a girl that's active in the community with the city of Clinton. We've had all kind of military people, medical people, people that's written books. Or I mean, it's just.
You spoke you were a commencement speaker a few years back.
Yeah. I mean, who'd ever thought that? You know.
I mean, still heavily involved in your school and in your community. I mean, that's
Well, I mean,
fantastic.
I'm the chairman of that committee, and it's like an all-star committee, but it's one of the coolest things to be involved in. I mean, I'm really proud of it. In the local East Tennessee Coaches Association in the early '80s, we formed an association to help promote baseball. And we started out, I mean, I wasn't the only one. There's about 6 or 8 of us. But that association is still going after, 40 some odd years. And in fact, they asked me this year at Media Day, they had a Media Day session like football's done for years. This was their second or third year doing that. They were between 30 and 40 schools, each school's head coach and 2 players, so it's a sizable crowd. And they had me speak at their Media Day, and so that was really, that was really cool. And then community-wise, I haven't been involved in a few years, but I used to be the president of Clinton Baseball Incorporated, the youth league stuff. We'd have about 350 kids playing and all that. Also, at one time, was over Clinton youth basketball, and we'd have about 400 because you had boys and girls, and we had little guys all the way up to high school age guys, and we're scattered at the elementary school and Green McAdoo and the community center and all over the place. Those were really, I'm really proud of being involved in that because that's helping kids.
Well, it's amazing to me. I mean, like you go, the first question I asked you was about, being born in Blowing Springs and growing up in Marlow. And here you are. I know you just recently had a birthday and you're still contributing to your community, still making, I mean, and I mean, frankly, that's why you're on this show, because you've been, you have made those contributions. Let me ask you a final question. I don't believe that anybody kind of pulls himself up by their bootstraps. There's always somebody that helps them. Right. There's always people that support them. There's always people that invest in their lives. And typically you see those people turn around and invest in other people. So my last question to you, Coach, is as you reflect back over all that you've accomplished and all the things that you've done, who were some of the people who were most influential on you as a person, as a teacher, and as a coach?
Well, obviously, starting with my mom and dad, we've already talked about that. Obviously, with my wife for being supportive and hanging with me through all these years. Family, yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a summer ball. Man, I love for playing baseball for these 2 guys. One was a guy named Dr. Thomas, Dr. Dan Thomas, a guy named Jim Whittlesey. They would get teams together in the summer, and we'd play in that league in Oak Ridge. But, man, they were just fun to play for. They just made it the game fun, Obviously, my coaches, like Jay Nidifer, I played for him, and I learned some good things, but I probably learned some things not to do, and I tried to steer away from some, maybe some of that.
That's part of it.
Paul Bostic was big because he gave me a shot. He gave me a chance, and so did Don Lockard. I mean, he, just because Mr. Bostic was kind of pushing that, I guess maybe if Lockard had resisted it or didn't want to do that, then that's probably the end of that story, maybe. So both of them really, kind of gave me a chance. My buddy Gene Owens, we've been together, and we talk strategy and talk things over, and that's been really cool for years. And that daggone birthday, my sister-in-law, she pointed this out that I'm now 3/4 of a century. You know, I thought, well, thanks a lot. You know, I mean, so she may not make the Christmas gift list this year.
So before we wrap this up, and you didn't know I was going to do this, but I'm going to tell one of my favorite Coach Taylor stories.
All right.
So when you came to Anderson County High School to coach basketball,
Yep.
I was your student manager
Yep.
one year, and we ventured up to Scott County, and we were playing Scott County up there, Anderson County up there, and Scott County had this guy on their team by the name of Rusty Yates.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And you threw everything at Rusty but the kitchen sink. I think you may even threw your clipboard at him. And we were in at the halftime, and we were going into the bathroom there, and you and I were having the locker room, and you came. I was in the bathroom, and you came in, and you looked over at me, and you said, "Well, Big D, got any ideas about what to do with the second half?" And I said, "No, Coach, I don't." And you said, "I don't either," and turned around and walked. I think Rusty dropped about 35 on us that night,
Yeah.
and the only reason he got 35 is probably because he didn't want 36. I mean, but if he did, and I just thought, I've reflected back on that, and that was just so funny because Rusty was the kind of guy you got up under him, and if you tried to get up under him, take away a shot, he just put the ball on the floor and go by you.
Oh, man, he's
and
good.
if you laid off of him to try to take away the dribble, he'd just shoot it from wherever he was, and more times than not, it went in.
The only thing might have slowed him down, his arm might have got tired from shooting so much. Man.
That's true. Coach, I can't thank you enough. I appreciate you coming in and doing this. It's been fantastic. And I just thank you so much for everything that you've done for our community, for the kids. And you know, obviously your relationship with Freddie is fantastic. So you're episode 4, and for baseball season, the start of baseball season, there's nobody better than you. So thank you so much for taking the
Well, I
time.
do appreciate you having me here. It's been a blast.
Folks, if you've got somebody that you'd like to recommend for as a guest for Storytellers, you can email me at dleach@acs.ac, or you can email Ryan Sutton at rsutton@acs.ac. And if you've got anybody, just give us the name, contact information, and the reason why you're recommending them. Again, for Ryan, for Coach Taylor, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back in May with episode 5.